Welcome everyone to the webinar. This isn't actually a live webinar. It actually was a live webinar, and then we ran into some problems. We had a basic, hang on, let me just throw a little tunes on in the background here. We had a bit of a technical Armageddon, if you will. We had so many little technical issues, and then to wrap it all up, when I went to pull the recording off, there was something wrong with the recording off of the broadcasting software that I'm using. There was a glitch, and the audio and the video were out of sync, and it was all garbled, and it was a mess. So last Thursday was not a fun technical day for me. It was one of those not so fun. So I'm re-recording this webinar. Because that's the only way to get it to you unless I do another webinar, and I thought, well, heck, I might as well just record it. So I'm using the same software, I'm using the same format, the whole 9 yards. The only thing is I'm adding, as you'll see down in the bottom, your left-hand side, you'll see a little bit of a music synthesizer thing going on there. I added that on just for a little bit of flavor. And so now let's get into this here. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Gary Robillard, and we're gonna dispense of the housekeeping rules. We had some housekeeping rules where you could go and increase the volume, but because this is recording, that's kind of moot at this point. So we're going to take that away. We're going to move into the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. I'm quite excited because this is a topic that I've had to explain to quite a few people when they say, hey, I want to go to the cloud. And I go, okay, what do you mean by that? You want to go to the cloud? Because going to the cloud, the term wanting to go to the cloud can mean a bunch of different things. And the word really doesn't do it justice, because when you say cloud, it could mean a number of things. And that's why we're doing this webinar, is to actually kind of demystify that. Well, what does it mean to go to the cloud? It used to be web. You know, we said, hey, we're doing this or web that. And now now they're using the word cloud, and people are a little confused. And some people think they got it, but they actually don't. And then some people actually know what it's about because they've done a little bit of research and they've figured out, how this all works. So that's the purpose of today, is to kind of show what the differences are, how you can leverage them, and thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this recording. Unfortunately, it's not live, but hopefully this will give you some greater insight into the cloud. So let's jump down to the agenda. What we're going to talk about are 5 different cloud structures. Actually, that's probably not totally accurate, because there's 2 structures, but then within there's about 4 or 5 different formats that you can use within those structures. So we're going to kind of talk about that. We're going to talk about leveraging these structures, and we're also going to talk about some cost-saving things that you probably don't know about. I had kind of I knew it, but it didn't register with me. This was about the end of last year, and I'll share when we get to that, what happened. But it was like, oh man, I could have done this a long time ago, and would have saved me some bucks. It's one of those things that just happens, and you kind of go from there. So let's dive into this. Let's go to the next screen here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about, first of all, this actual structure. Well, where can the cloud actually be? And there's a couple of different areas here. Let me just see. Yeah. So the first one is the local server. So you may have your own server. Now, typically, most people don't do what I'm going to suggest here, or actually, I'm not going to suggest this. I'm just going to say this is what you could do. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can use your own server if you've got one and make it a cloud server. It could be a cloud. A cloud server is basically you know, just has all the components of being able to access it from the web. So you could have documents that are accessible. You could have a remote, what they call remote desktop. You can have a bunch of different things and have it on your own server. The issue with that is it gets quite costly because you have to make sure it's locked down secure, and that's a huge thing, is making sure it's locked down secure. And then you've got it's going to take extra time for your IT people to manage and look after it, because you want to make sure that it doesn't get hacked. So once you go down that road, it can get pretty, you know, you're setting yourself up unless you really got some good beefy equipment. And I've seen servers go anywhere, you know, for that purpose, anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000. Anything lower than that, you're going to have to throw a bunch of money at to make it work. So your own server, that's one place you could make it into a cloud server. Don't recommend it. So let's take that off the table. The next one is hang on here. There we are. The cloud server. So a cloud server is basically someone has a cloud server farm, and what they do is they have it all set up so that you can rent space. Basically, is what you're doing. You're renting their hardware. Some people will have their own hardware and put it into one of these server farms, but again, doesn't make sense. You might as well just rent space. And back in the day, they when they first started doing this, you know, there was everybody and their dog trying to do this, but there was a lot of issues. There was bandwidth issues. There was all sorts of different things, and so some major players came out of the woodwork and kind of went down the road with this. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment here. So that's what a cloud server is. It's just you're renting space somewhere in the world where you've got a server. It's got redundancies. It's got all the security. It's got everything you need, so you don't have to worry about it. We provide cloud hosting in several different ways. And we'll kind of get into that as we're going along here. And you know, it's locked down and secure, and you don't have to worry about it. So we'll talk about how that all works. So let's turn that off. There we go. And now let's just dive into kind of the demo structure here, so I can kind of first talk about it. All right. So here we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is web applications. So there's a confusion sometimes, and they say, I want to go cloud. They could be talking about documents. They could be talking about applications. So a web application is just that. It's just an application. So if I go to, let's go to Chrome here. And so I've got two here. I'm going to jump into this one here. And this is called Lucidchart. And I'm going to log into the Lucidchart, and this is a web application. Web applications can link to other applications depending upon what you want it to do, but they tend to be fairly inflexible in what they can do. Lucidchart is one of the few online softwares that I've used, or online applications, if you want to call that, or cloud applications or web applications. You can throw a bunch of terms at this thing. Choose the one that sticks with you and use it. But for today, we'll call it a cloud app. And Lucidchart is probably one of the best I've ever used. I mean, I can go in here, and it has the flexibility of a desktop, which is amazing how well it works. It's got its whole drop-down menu at the top here. It's a fantastic program. I use this for design development and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a great tool, and that's a web application. Then we have something like Act, and I'm just logging into our what they call the SaaS model of this. launch act. And this particular application, it's like Zoho, it's like Sugar CRM, it's like Salesforce. They're all the same. This is going to take a little time to load because I'm recording this and I'm running in a virtual environment, so it'll take a second to load. There we are. And so this is a web application too. All web applications have limitations. It's just the nature of the environment that they have limitations. Usually they're flexibility limitations and their functionality limitations. A desktop has, and you and I have been using desktop functionality for years, and we know that, man, you can pretty much do a lot of different things, where sometimes those limitations cascade over to here. Like I said, Lucidchart's probably one of the better ones I've ever used. It still has some limitations, and it still has some inflexibility of wrapping around how I want to use it, where a desktop allows me more flexibility. So I'm not opposed to web applications. They have their place. I use Lucidchart. I used to use Microsoft Visio, which was a desktop application. Great, powerful, but I found Lucidchart, once I got using it, it was just fantastic, and it was easier and more forgiving than Microsoft Visio for doing diagrams. But when it comes to web applications, hang on here, I went and booted myself out. There we go, we'll get back in. When it comes to web applications for CRM, for an example, they can have a lot of inflexibilities. Act, fortunately, has some quite a bit of flexibility where you can adjust the layout and move it around the way you want it. But part of the inflexibilities is, especially this new model, you can't have a remote database. You can't synchronize a remote database, so you can't go offline, work online, and sync. Where the Act for web, if you have an Act license, you can create your own web server or have it hosted again by someone else in the cloud and have your own web. It still has limitations. Just web apps do. So they have their place. For most salespeople, power users, the web version on any of the CRMs can be challenging. And I'll be straight up. I've had clients that have gone because their company wanted to go to one of the other online or web app CRMs, and then chose to go back to a desktop because it just didn't function exactly the way they had hoped. And you could have speed issues because of bandwidth problems. Anyways, I won't get into it. But that's a web app. So that was the idea of bringing this up. Is when somebody says cloud, they could mean a web application. And there's nothing, there's some great web applications out there. Just know that it's not exactly the same as a desktop application. Okay. Now, one thing I was going to mention is back probably about 6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago now, the people who were building web applications were saying this is going to be the future. Everything is going to go to web applications. The desktop is going by the way of the dinosaur, and all these web developers or web app developers were saying that's the way it's going to go. Some really smart people said, that's not going to be the way it goes. There's going to be web apps, but yes, there's going to be people that still want the desktop, and probably majority of them will want the desktop. And they said, and Gartner Group was one of them, and they're kind of the de facto, what's going to happen in the future. They predicted that the what they call a VDI, virtual desktop environment, was going to be the stronghold. That's where things were going to go, because the desktop versions of applications were way more powerful, way more flexible. You could program and code in there and make it fit the way you wanted it to fit. And they said it's not going to go away. Two rose to the top right off the bat, and it was just prior to this announcement by Gartner Group, and the two that jumped to the forefront was Microsoft and Amazon. and they started creating these huge server farms and working out all the bugs and issues and whatever it would take to create an environment where you could get yourself a virtual server in the cloud and do whatever you wanted with it. You wanted to share documents on it, you wanted to do this or that or the next thing, and you could do it and have access by a web browser. And so that's what's happened today. The web apps are still there, they're not going away, but this virtual desktop environment is taking great hold. Most people are going in that direction, and you'll see why once I pull it up here shortly. But that's just to give you a heads up. That's what's going on. I should actually did this so I actually having a conversation with you, and you can see me a little better than down in the corner. Anyways, part of kind of doing the dialogue and acting as your producer and pulling things up at the same time, a little challenging. Anyways, so let's move on. Web apps, you kind of got that now, or cloud apps if you want to call it cloud apps. So let's move on. Next thing we want to talk about is documents. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to minimize this. And so documents. Again, most people will have them on their computer. They'll have them on maybe on their own local server. Maybe it's just a desktop in the corner. But a lot of people are going to cloud-based document storage and retrieval. And there's lots of them out there. We used to use a product called Ignite, which I'll show you here. Fantastic product. I've tried lots of them out. That was an incredibly powerful environment to work from, and it's in the cloud. Things like Dropbox, Sync, Box. There's a whole slew. If you want to have a cloud storage, there's a whole slew of them. What we did, this was probably about 10, 15 years ago, somewhere around there, around 2013, we decommissioned our file server. Decommissioned it, put everything in the cloud, never looked back. The best thing we ever did. Everything gets backed up. If something gets deleted, I've got, well, depending upon who's hosting it for you, anywhere from 30 to 90 days. That you can go back and retrieve something if it gets blown away. So it's a fantastic way to do it. Now, we were using Ignite, and there's several different ways when you're using. Let me just have a chat with you here. There's several different ways to do this. You've got where the documents are in the cloud, and they're also on your desktop. And they synchronize. So you make a change on your desktop, it updates the cloud. You get somebody else in a different location, they update their documents, and they sync to the cloud, and there's this constant syncing back and forth. That's one way. The other way is what we call a web dev, or it's a connection, direct connection to the cloud. There is no syncing. It's just you're accessing it direct live from the cloud. And there's some disadvantages to that and some advantages on both sides of those. And then there's a third way where it's in the cloud and you put it on your local machine, you do your thing, it syncs it back up, and then it kind of takes it off of your computer after a period of time, so you're not having to have all of those documents on your computer. So you have them all on your computer and then they synchronize to the cloud, or you have them where they come down a little bit and then sync and then they release after a period of time. And then you've got where you're just going directly to the cloud. And again, there's advantages and disadvantages of both. The advantages of the sync one is sharing documents, more collaboration type stuff, where if you're pulling it up directly off the cloud and you're doing a live connection, a web dev connection, you're actually held that document. So if somebody else wants to use that, they will be in read only. They can't go and adjust it while you're in the document. So that's one of the issues of doing a direct. I prefer the direct, just fingers crossed that nobody else is using the same document that I am at the same time. And the likelihood of that is like winning the lottery, at least from my experience. All right, so let me show you what this looks like. So this is a direct connection using Ignite, And if I go down, I have a personal folder here where I can go into my private folder, and then I have a shared folder. I go into the shared folder, and this is our structure. This is how ours is structured in Ignite. We've got administration, business strategy, Dropbox. That's, most people wouldn't have that, but because we're constantly uploading and downloading databases and all sorts of other stuff with our clients, we have what we call a Dropbox. And that's basically what it is. You can drop stuff off. And then we have marketing, operations, and sales. And each one of them has a drill down of different information. If I dropped into operations, we have a whole bunch of different things in there. So what we did is we were using this for many, many years, happy as clams on this. We were running $45 a month US to have this environment. And we get about 1 terabyte of space, and it's fantastic. Love it. Then we had an epiphany at the end of last year going, we have Office 365 and Office 365, and it didn't click with me, but it comes with 1 terabyte of space called OneDrive. And so I'm going, well, why aren't we using that? If I've got 1 terabyte of space in Ignite and it's costing me $45 a month, why don't I use Office 365 or OneDrive, and is free because it comes with my OneDrive account or my Office 365 account. So if you've got an Office 365 account, you have 2 things that you probably weren't aware of. Now, this isn't the online version of Office 365. This would be like standard or professional. But if you've got Office 365, you have 2 things that you may not be aware you even have. And so to be cost effective, one is you've got OneDrive. And OneDrive, and probably you have SharePoint where you can actually, and I'll talk about SharePoint here because it kind of works together with OneDrive. And you probably have Microsoft Hosted Exchange where you could actually host your email up in the cloud. Best thing we ever did was move it off of, I think we were hosting it through TELUS. Best thing we ever did is went to Microsoft Hosted Exchange. My spam stuff went down to just about zip. And it just works. It's fantastic. Happy to have a conversation with any of you, about this. And in the email that this video is coming to you, there's a link there where you can actually book time with me if you need to kind of drill down about your specific circumstance and have any questions. And I'm happy to discuss any of the stuff that we're covering today with you. So those are 2 things you're getting with Microsoft 365 that you may or may not be aware of, and some serious cost savings. So we moved over. We still have our opening with Ignite because there are a few things we still need it for, at least for the time being. But we moved over to OneDrive, and we initiated SharePoint. SharePoint is a top part of OneDrive. It kind of organizes the file stuff when you're working in a group environment. So let me just show you what that looks like. So OneDrive, my personal account. So remember in here, I've got a private and a shared, and then I've got in OneDrive, when you can see the little cloud like this, that's my personal account. So I can go into here, and this is my personal stuff. And then you'll see up here where it says CoreLogix Corp. This says CoreLogix Corporation too. That's just because that's our account. It's a corporate account. You can set up a OneDrive personal account if you wanted. But if you're going to do a team environment, you'll want to set up your OneDrive and then your corporate one, and then you're going to do SharePoint, which allows you to share different folders. You can set up a structure like if I click on my CoreLogix one, I have the same structure as I did with Ignite. I just set it up the same way, and these are all shareable. I can have some people in the organization have no access to admin, but they have access to sales. They have access to maybe operations, but they don't have access to marketing. Whatever it is you want to do, you set up your structure with your permissions, and then your team has access to it, and then you have access to your own personal ones. But everything is in the cloud. And then you can set it up the way I've got it set up right here. This is through SharePoint, and this does the syncing. So the way I've got this one set up, it will bring down a document, I can work on it, and then it will synchronize it up, and then after a short period of time, it will actually remove it off my drive. That's how this is set up here. We also have, and I've got it down here, I've got a SharePoint direct connection, like the web dev connection that we've got set up with Ignite. All I have to do is click on S drive, and I've got the same structure, but now I'm going directly to the cloud. There's no synchronization, there's no pulling it down to my local machine. And if you got limited hard drive space on your local machine, this may be a better way for you. And then just the only caveat to that would be that possibly, let me get up here, possibly you're working on a document that somebody else wants to work on at the same time and you can't collaborate. That would be the only disconnect. All right. Let's so that hopefully this makes sense. All right, so if you've got Office 365, you should be looking at using OneDrive and if you've got it on your local machines, on your desktop, maybe on a pseudo server sitting on the corner of a PC, I would seriously think about getting it into the cloud. Again, one of your employees or yourself by mistake goes and deletes a file. You don't have to worry about backups. They're in there for 90 days. Go back, you can pull it out. Bob's your uncle. So I would seriously look at that as a cost-saving measure and as a security measure as far as your documents and keeping them up to speed. And again, there's several different ways you can do that. All right, let's move on. Let's close this down. So that's documents. Now we talked about web applications. Now we talked about documents that are used in the cloud. All right. And now the next one is another way of using, let's go into ACT here. Another way of using documents in the cloud, or not documents in the cloud, my apologies, is using a cloud server is hosting a database. So in ACT sense here, we can actually, and we offer this service just like we do the VDI. We offer database hosting. So basically, you take your database, you put it in a hosting server in the cloud, and they cut remotes off of that, and they put them on each person's machine because maybe you're in different locations, especially with COVID, and then everybody just synchronizes. And really, the only difference of look and feel off of your regular desktop when you go to synchronizing host synchronization is that you have what they call a remote. So you'll see in our production database, our database up here, you'll see ACT hyphen, and then this is always the name of your database up in the top left-hand corner here. Yeah, you can see it there. Top left-hand corner. Ours is called CoreLogix. The only difference is that, and let me just find, there we are. There, that's what I was looking for. You would have, so on our database, it's called CoreLogix. Now you'll see in this little screen pop-up that I pulled up, it says corelogix_Gary. That's my remote. And then the only other difference is this little red area that you have is where we install a sync process or sync application that will sync for you and show you. ACT has a native one, but it's garbage. So we built our own. And in this one, it'll actually tell you when was the last time you synced, when's the next sync coming up, and you can do a manual sync anytime you want. It also, in the back end of this, has a maintenance thing where it'll do a maintenance on your database every night or whenever you want it to do it. So that's really the only difference, and the only drawback on that is that you have a little bit of latency. So if you're synchronizing every 30 minutes, you have a latency of maybe an hour between people because they may be syncing at different times. And that's really the only difference, is it's not live. But other than that, it's a great way of working in different places. We've got people that work in the same office and do this just because they don't want their data in the cloud, and they just don't want to have to worry about a server. They don't want a server. They just want to be able to share. And so, we'll host the database and everybody will have their stuff and away they go. Great way of working it. So that's another way of cloud. So just to summarize as we're going through here, we've got, let me pull me up here and let's get rid of that. So what we want to do is we want to, we've got the different structures, your own server or cloud server. We've got web applications. We've got document management or file storage. And now we've got sync hosting. And that's where your database is up in the cloud and it synchronizes back and forth between your local machine, wherever you're at. And you can have it on a laptop, a desktop. You can be in Florida. Not that I would want to be there yet, but maybe soon. And so you can be anywhere in the globe and synchronize your data and work just like you were as if you were at the office. All right, last one. All right, so let's close this down. The last one is called, this would be the Ferrari of cloud computing. All right. So all the other ones are great. They all have their place. They're all just incredibly good. This is the Ferrari, and the Ferrari has a lot. This is where the Gartner Group and a bunch of these statisticians were saying this is where things are going, and we're there now. This is like people are working in this next environment I'm showing you, going to show you, because of so many factors. They can work remotely. They can work on a Mac. They can work on a PC. They can work on a tablet. So they're not limited. When you're using these kind of scenarios, you've got different ways you can do this. So I can have a virtual desktop. Well, let's get into it, and then we'll kind of drill down a little bit. So this is called a VDI, virtual desktop environment. So you'll see here I've got my web or my desktop environment. I've got my Act, I've got my Word, my OneNote, Excel, I got my email, I've got everything on my desktop. So, and that's on your computer. So if I've got 5 people in my office, each person has their desktop on their computers. You'll have an IT person that has to look after each one of those. If something goes funky, they work on that computer. If this goes funky on that guy's computer, they got to work on that one. Sorry, I talk a lot with my hands. And so there's just more things to kind of manage, right? Where in a virtual desktop environment, you have incredible security. It's in the cloud. You don't have the maintenance that you would normally have, because if you lost your laptop, you go buy a new one, you connect in. It's no big deal. You're not losing any data. You lose your hard drive on your desktop in the office, pooches out, no problem. You just get another one and away you go. And you can, if you like Macs, run on a Mac. I'm running on a virtual machine right now in here, but I run all mine on my Mac. I just launch it from my Mac. But I thought this would make more sense to show you in a Windows environment, because probably most of you are running on a Windows environment. So this is basically it. It's an RDP connection, Microsoft connection, and you'll see it's going to load up, and bang, I'm in now a desktop environment on a server. This particular server is in Toronto, and we offer this service. So basically, you take everything that was on your desktop, you install it in the cloud once. And then you set up each person that's going to connect into that server. So each person has their own client login. This was mine, Gary. I just logged into my client one, and now I have access to everything that I want. I want to get into Word. There's Word, loads up, and bang, you're in there. In fact, there's been sometimes when I've been working on a remote, and the other thing, that's the other thing. And what I can do is work in this environment, but if I have to be someplace where there's no internet connection, I can't go in, because remember, this is you're having to have an internet connection to get in here. If I'm in a place, maybe I'm in Mauritius, off an island off the east coast of Africa, and I'm in a place where I'm on a beach, and I want to do some work, but not that I would want to work, but say I needed to do some work, I can have a remote database, just like I was talking about before. So you can create a bunch of remotes off of here and synchronize up to this environment. And so you can have the best of both worlds of accessing this. You could even set this up, because it's in a web environment with all the security. You could actually use the Act for Web and browse in with this with a browser if you wanted to. Not that I would want to. I'd use the full meal deal instead of just a web app. But you can see this environment is just super powerful. I can launch into Act just super fast. I'm not going to go all the way in. But you can see maybe it's a few milliseconds slower than my desktop, but I don't notice it. You wouldn't notice it. Most people wouldn't notice it. You have this little bar at the top that kind of indicates this. On the Mac, you don't have this little bar. It just shows the screen. But you can minimize this. You can see your connection here, communication connection to access this. And this is an incredible environment. I have my Word, everything that I would have on my local desktop is now in the cloud. Everybody is live, real time. The security is there. You can even have dual authentication. So you go to log in, it sends you an email down to your, or a text down to your phone. You key in a number. So if you want security, it's got security, just incredible. What we've done for the clients and for ourselves, because we have our own environment, but for our clients that are on this environment, we've set this up so we don't even use the cloud, the storage on this machine for the documents. We use OneDrive and SharePoint. And so we take advantage of that free terabyte of space that we have with Office 365. And we use it in this environment as well. So we don't have to pay any more for a large space because we've got, a half a terabyte of space that we need and we get charged for it. We set it up a certain way and then we just have our documents in OneDrive. So it's an incredible environment to work from. And so this is one that I highly recommend for people who don't want to have a server. There's two different ways to do it. If you don't want to have a server, we can go with the cloud hosting, the database hosting, or you can do the VDI virtual desktop hosting. Either one works fantastic. But for those who have your own server, definitely take advantage of Office 365. Use OneDrive. They have a terabyte of space. Let's just go up and work here for a second here. So we're going to wrap this up. So just take advantage of now that you know that there's several different ways of doing cloud computing. Again, you've got web applications. You've got documents in the cloud. You've got a database sync hosting. And now you have VDI, virtual desktop environment, where you can actually have everything in the cloud. And so what fits for you? What do you need? And if you need to give me a call again, in this email that you just received, there's a link. You can book some time with me if you want to you're still uncertain, because this can be overwhelming for the person who's not technically where they where they want to be and in understanding of certain technical things. Happy to have a chat with you and kind of just go through that. But hopefully this has been of benefit to you. Hopefully this has clarified some of the mystique of the cloud computing and helped you to understand where things are at and where things are going and what kind of power you have at your fingertips. And take advantage of Office 365 if you have that. Use two things you want to use. Use Use OneDrive and Outlook with Office Exchange Server, the hosted Exchange. Two great ways of utilizing that tool, where most people are using Office 365 just for Word, Excel, the native stuff that they had, and they think that's what we got. Well, you got a lot more than that. Take advantage of it. Anyways, hope this has been of benefit to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, like I said, book an appointment with me. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you're thinking, any questions you have, and we'll go from there. Have yourself an awesome day. We look forward to chatting with you on the next webinar or video. Bye for now.